Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gamey Daddy channel. First of all, before I jump into the video, I want to say thank you so much for being here, for even clicking the video. For those of you who are subscribed, not subscribed, those of you who click like or click dislike, I appreciate you all for even engaging in the content in any form that you can. So today, I want to address the elephant in the room. For the longest time, I've kind of let this topic just kind of go by for a little bit. And in a few months, the promise of another video game that's, in quotes, supposedly going to challenge the Division 2 is coming out. Now, before we even go further, if you're thinking if I'm biased or going to be objective, let me just spoil it for you. I have very little objectivity when it comes to the Division 2, actually less than a lot of other people. I'm a Division fan. I like the game. I like the franchise. From time to time, I'll give my honest critiques of things that I feel like need to be done right and things that I feel are missed opportunities. You'll see it even in my past videos. You can just go back a few videos and you're going to hear me chide on the development cycle of the Division 2. But nonetheless, I understand that it is such a well-positioned game, and many other games will be pining very soon and vying for the audience of the Division 2 because it's a viable audience. There's not really many other games that are doing what the Division is doing. Now, you may compare some other games from time to time that have some strands, for what the Division is doing, but the Division is actually much more unique from those other games. And in my assessment of what we've seen of Outriders, I'm going to show you why the Division 2 has its uniqueness and why, as a Division agent, I think you might want to reconsider the proposition of Outriders. Now, first things first, I think Outriders is going to be a very decent game. Don't get me wrong. One of the things about assessing a game before it's released is it's a risk. You can say something now and then the game comes out and, who knows what. Like my own assessment of Cyberpunk 2077 before the game came out, where I thought the game was going to, in quote, according to somebody who gave me a touche, sit at the table with games like GTA. Boy, was that a stupid assessment. And I basically am eating my crow for even making that kind of assertion. At some point, I bought into some of the hype, even though I was very cautious. I remember talking with some friends of mine and saying, I just felt like the game was going to be a little dated, but then I thought about GTA also in the time that it released. Maybe Cyberpunk 2077 was going to somewhat even, in a sense, kind of, stick close to that GTA model and be acceptable on that level. But man, did that game fall way shorter than my expectations for it. And so I don't want to have any expectations for Outriders. I think with Cyberpunk 2077, we've learned not to ever assess or hype any game or expect anything from any game until the game is in our hands and we're playing it and engaging with it. So what is this Outriders game? From all of the research I've been doing, it's a story-driven, according to the development team and all the people that have gotten to play this thing at a Square Enix event. Whenever you hear Square Enix event, doesn't that raise some Avengers flags for you? Whatever. And then, it's supposedly 3 players for co-op and multiplayer, and you guys can go in there and knock out a bunch of content and do all of that stuff. Nice. Wonderful proposition. I'll probably put my money and buy this game, honestly, just to support the concept so that somebody else can one day come and actually compete against the Division 2. I love the competition, but the Division 2 seems to have no competitor. You may say Destiny, but Destiny is unique from the Division. You may say Warframe. Your Warframe is unique. And I think Outriders is also going to be unique, but the Division is going to stand in its own little bubble. What is that bubble? Realism. Now, you may think that that's a trivial aspect of a video game and doesn't really, have a lot of bearing as to how you're going to appreciate Outriders compared to the Division 2. But let me tell you something. Many agents will tell you that they don't know the reason why they continue to come back to the Division 2, regardless of what other game is out there that they go and play. Ladies and gentlemen, I've said this many, many times, and I'll continue to say it again. The realism is not found in many other games. I've looked at Outriders from a lot of the gameplay. I've looked at the shooting. I've looked at the enemy comparisons. I've looked at all kinds of other fun stuff. And I have to say that Outriders does have a very unique take on a shooter. I think with its approach, it's trying to come really close to collecting some portion of the Division audience. But then at the end of the day, from a cosmetic standpoint, it looks a lot like Gears of War. Many Division agents do not play Gears of War or don't play Gears of War anymore. If you actually wonder why that is the case, Gears of War 5 actually does exist. And to my knowledge, it doesn't seem to have at least the longevity, traction, and hook that the Division has had for its core and hardcore players. I mean, that's just my assessment. Nor has Gears of War been able to, in one single swoop, pack up a bunch of Division agents to it. Outriders looks eerily similar to what Gears of War is doing, with a spin on the RPG aspect of things. And to me, I don't think that's going to satisfy the itch for the Division agents, because it's missing something at the core of that game design that the Division is able to bring to the market. And that is a realistic, believable, open world set in a world that you and I can relate to as tangible. You see, this is next level design, and I think massive Ubisoft may have found their niche from doing this from their Tom Clancy and Assassin's Creed games, and even their Far Cry games. So one of the really interesting things that you're going to notice when they set these games, I'm talking their Tom Clancy games, I'm talking their Far Cry games, and their Assassin's Creed franchises, is they'll set them in realistic worlds that you either have knowledge of or a world that you actually do live in or have visited. Example, The Division 1 was set in New York City. Those of you who are listening to this video who live in or have been to New York City, you know how epic and how monumental that game is, because not only was the atmosphere beautiful, it was an atmosphere in a place that you knew was tangible. In fact, I had a friend go on vacation one time, and he went to NYC, and he said, "Yo, what is this game you're playing?" He saw me playing The Division when he came to visit me. He said, "Can you run to Flatiron District?" I said, "Sure." So I fast traveled to Flatiron District, and he was looking at a Flatiron building. He was like, "Yeah, we were here." And this is somebody who's not even a Division fan, and he just took the controller from me and ran around the city for just like 10 minutes. Can you imagine that kind of an experience in any other video game? This is what I feel Outriders may be lacking. Now, this is not to say Outriders is not going to be a good game. Please, I already said and told you in the beginning of the game that I think it's going to be a decent game. But to think that this game is going to come and scoop a lot of Division players is going to be a very hard task for them to pull off. They can do it, not saying they can't do it, but they really need to bring their A game when it comes to all kinds of other things. Now, here's where I think Outriders does have an opportunity. Mechanics, balancing, and doing PvP, if they're even going to do PvP in the right way. Did you hear that? If they're going to do PvP. As much as the Division 2 or the Division 1's PvP is not the best thing since peanut butter, there is a huge audience that do engage in it. The Division 2's PvP community will complain about their PvP and still play it. It's very fascinating. You'll see Division agents like, "The PvP sucks. Let's go to the Dark Zone." In the same breath, Division agents do that. Why? Because the experience is very different from something else that you can get in another game. And so I think Outriders does have a strong proposition, but there is so much that the game needs to fulfill in order to get the audience that it's actually targeting. Again, AI and enemy design. This is something that many folk don't really understand that is very, very crucial with the Division game. The Division 2 has, in my opinion, let's just say it right now, one of the best AIs in the market. I will argue this point at every level with anyone. Let's do it. This AI design, I don't know what the logic is behind it, but I think for a shooter of its nature, it really does work very well. And I know there are annoying AI propositions in there, like your rushers that will rush at you to get you out of cover. Guess what? Even in Outriders, they actually do have systems like this. In fact, I was watching a creator who had actually played an exclusive version of this, and he said there are enemy AI implementations in this game that actually force you away from cover and try to make you take the fight to the enemies, because in many cases, that's one way to heal yourself. So they're not only using this to actually pressure you, there are systems actually designed around this. This may work or this may fail. especially for the traditional cover-based shooters or cover-based players that exist in the Division 1. If they don't like that proposition, they're most likely going to put Outriders down after they've played it for a little bit and go back to the Division where cover, at least for a huge percentage of your play, makes sense. I mean, yes, you know, when you're playing against the Black Tusk, if you see a Grenadier, move. When you're playing against the Outcast, if you see one of those kamikaze, bounce. When you're playing against the, you know, the Cleaners, if you see one of those, they're silly, drones that drops all these ordinances, you know, change covers. These are things that we know with the enemy factions. Is Outriders going to be able to separate the enemy factions to have, you know, specific systems that you can identify, or is everything just going to be a horde and rush mode? These are questions that we have that have not yet been answered, and we're almost like, what, 60 something days, or no, the game comes out early February, and we still don't have a lot of these details. So what is Outriders really going to be? Is it going to be all talk, or are they going to put a beta in place? So January should be a time where we get a demo. I said beta, but I want us to scratch that. Demos are the way to go. I think gaming companies need to put demos so somebody can play and assess the game in their own time when they're actually in a better place to think and be calm. And so I just want to say, as much as I would love to see, competition, I don't know if many studios are actually trying to put the resources in to actually compete with Tom Clancy's The Division 2. The studio that's working on Outriders seems to be a very minimum size studio, a decent size studio, but not anything as to the juggernaut of a studio that Massive is when it comes to comparing, employees. I mean, look at Rocksteady. Rocksteady has about, 300 employees. Massive has twice that and more. I mean, that's insane. And Rocksteady basically redefined an entire genre of video games with such a small team. Massive has the capacity to do it, but I just don't know if they have the vision to be able to redefine the industry. But very soon, if nobody comes in to take the cake, I think they're going to continue to set the tone, which right now is not satisfactory for a lot of players. And, we would love to see somebody actually, take on them. But when it comes to Outriders, my own assessment right now is I don't know. I'll believe it when I see it. But to say that Outriders is going to be the game that is so awesome, is going to take a lot of Division players away, that assessment is not fair, because there are so many things that you have to actually find out before getting there. And right now, I think it's an opportunity for the developers over at that studio. I can't remember the name of the studio. It's actually a very interesting name, to actually bring this game to the front of the community and start taking some valuable feedback, giving it to content creators. And I mean, I know I'm a content creator, is not going to solve your problem. Content creators cannot buy enough copies of your games to make it successful. It's the gamers themselves that will actually do that. So the games have to be in the hands of the gamers. But I'll leave that topic for another discussion down the road. Hopefully this was engaging for you. I want you to comment in the comment section. Let me hear your thoughts about Outriders. This is not a bashing, by the way. I know someone's probably going to take it as a bashing, but that's not my goal. At the end of the day, we have to have this conversation, and I wanted to have this conversation because for the longest time I've been reading a lot of comments, just hearing a lot of people talk about the game, and I just wanted to address it just from my own perspective. And hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully it actually beats the heck out of Division 2 so I can actually play something fun. But from what I'm seeing,